Constitution of Maldives that it is compulsory. Religious teachings of church, state schools is compulsory. Compare this with Article 28 of the Constitution of India, which says that there shall be no religious education in any educational institution that is funded by the state. There shall be no religious education. Coxtown, Frasertown, Cooktown. Just look at the sights and smells and just hear and the smell, the number of biryani houses that are there along the way. The church bells will be pealing, somebody is getting married or there is a funeral. You hardly see any temples there. You are saying there is no religious freedom in India? Separation of religion and state. You can imagine the absurdity of the ratings by this organization, that is both VDEM and RSF. When you find Maldives is placed at number 76, way ahead of India. India, according to VDEM, is 97. India, according to RSF, is 142. And this fellow Maldives is 76. This is a nation in which a non-Muslim cannot even be a citizen, let alone holding any office. Article 9 bracket D of the Constitution of Republic of Maldives says a non-Muslim may not become a citizen of Maldives. And VDEM says it is the 76th best democracy and we are 97, or according to RSF we are 142. Then Article 1 of the Constitution of Maldives says that the religion of the state of Maldives is Islam and no law contrary to the tenet of Islam shall be enacted. Article 109b says the President of Maldives must not only be a Muslim but also belong to the Sunni sect. Article 149 bracket B declares that every member of the judiciary shall be a Muslim and a follower of the Sunni school of Islam. The fundamental rights do not provide right to freedom of religion and belief. It does not bar discrimination based on religion. For us, sir, Article 15, if you read Indian Constitution, there shall be no discrimination on the ground of sex, caste, religion, race, place of birth. Article 15. And Article 14, equality before law and the equal protection of laws. We are miles ahead of these fellows and this is how they are rating India. Then, as I said, 149b, Maldives Constitution, judiciary, every member of judiciary shall be a Muslim and a follower of the Sunni school of Islam. The fundamental rights do not provide for freedom of religion. It does not bar discrimination based on religion, and the Constitution expects parents to educate their children as Muslims. That is, those who are non-Muslims. Suppose I am posted there for 1 year for any this thing or any organization or my company, then I have my wife and children. The Constitution of Maldives expects parents to educate their children as Muslims. Then Article 36C, irrespective of what their religion will be. The laws also state it is illegal to propagate any religion other than Islam. The question that arises after reading the Constitution of Maldives is whether there is any semblance of democracy in that nation. To place such a nation ahead of India while measuring democracy smacks of not just non-application of mind but mischief. Secondly, we come to RSF report. Burkina Faso is number 36 as a democracy. India is 142. Who is this guy, Burkina Faso? I was looking at the reports. Slavery is endemic there, and the United States State Department has identified this country in its trafficking of persons. Reports saying that slavery continued to exist in Burkina Faso and Burkinabe children were often the victims. It said slavery is an entrenched institution in this country and this nation is supposedly much, much better as a democracy than India. Then already Maldives I have told you. Greece, RSF report, Greece is 65, India is 142 and the Constitution of Greece says relations of state and church and state, and about that it says, emphatically declares that prevailing religion in Greece is that of the Eastern Orthodox Church of Christ. Then we have Comoros, which is the same thing. Malta, RSF puts it at 81, India is 142. The religion of Malta shall be the Roman Catholic Apostolic Church. Religious teaching of this church shall be provided in all state schools as part of compulsory education. This is the constitution of Maldives, that it is compulsory. Religious teachings of church in state schools is compulsory. Compare this with Article 28 of the Constitution of India, which says that there shall be no religious education in any educational institution that is funded by the state. There shall be no religious education. This is Article 28 of the Indian Constitution. Then Freedom House, their report of 2021, India is the worst on the following 4 counts. Clean election index. Actually, if we were such a strong nation like America, I would have said, send our special forces, arrest these fellows. Freedom House, President, Secretary, others who have produced this report. Bring them to Karnataka. Show them the Karnataka election results. It's terrible, sir. He says clean election index, on that we are the worst in the world. Freedom of association index. Is anybody in this country prevented from any kind of association? Look at the number of associations and institutions that we are all members of, irrespective of what our religious affiliation is, or cultural or linguistic or whatever. Freedom of expression. He says India is one of the worst. That's why I said, we have to arrest them, put them on an Indian Air Force plane, bring them here, make them listen to Republic TV and Times Now between 7 and 9, punishment for 7 days. And because they say there is no freedom of expression in India. Alternative sources of information index is absent, he says. It says India is as autocratic as Pakistan. So, freedom of religion has declined in India. So, if that is so, we must ask them to please come here on Eid to Jayanagar 4th block. There is an Eidgah there. On Eid morning, you please come. Non-Muslims cannot enter 3rd block, 4th block that day morning. In fact, some relatives of mine who live here, they were telling me what happened last Eid. So, there is no freedom of religion in India, he says. Sir, I grew up in Langford town. Our family, we had a home there. So, I will say, I want to bring these freedom of house people, put them in my car and drive down from Langford town, which is southeast, towards north. We will pass Richmond town, McIver town, Shivaji Nagar, Cox town, Fraser town, Cook town. Just look at the sights and smells and just hear. And the smell, the number of biryani houses that are there along the way, the church bells will be pealing, somebody is getting married or there is a funeral. You hardly see any temples there. You are saying there is no religious freedom in India? So, this is a very serious matter, and the time has come for us to just stand up and just rubbish these reports and more. Don't worry about these Americans who are talking about this. We need to worry about our own fellow citizens who are propagating some of these things. If Rahul Gandhi or anybody says there is no religious freedom in India, we must put him in a car in Langford town and drive him up, right up to Cook town and Cox town. As a punishment, we must do this. So, we should not put up with this kind of thing. This is all anti-Indian talk by many people. They are opposed to Narendra Modi. We are a democracy. There are a lot of people who vote for Bharatiya Janata Party and Narendra Modi. There are many people who don't vote for that party. That is all fine. But your hatred for Narendra, first of all, you should not hate anybody. Now your hatred for Narendra Modi has degenerated into hatred for India and running down India and India's democracy. And I think we must stand up and, mark these people out and challenge them. I'll now come to freedom of expression. In the last 2-3 years, in fact, I discussed this with some people in the government also. Look at the hashtags on Twitter. Lie like Modi, hashtag, lie like Modi, hashtag Layendra Modi, hashtag Fakendra Modi, hashtag worst Prime Minister of India, criminal PM. These are hashtags which these fellows are running every day on Twitter and abusing the Prime Minister. And you say that there is no freedom of expression in India. In fact, I have done 52 years now in media, both in Bangalore and then Delhi, and I have traveled around and all that. I have not seen this kind of degeneration in public discourse as I see now in the last 8-10 years. And social media has contributed big time to that. And their bones are intact, they are all physically quite all right, all these fellows who are generating these hashtags. Nothing has happened to them. In fact, they get energized if they were to hear a part of my speech today, they will get energized to abuse me also with greater ferocity tomorrow morning on Twitter. Now, these are the people who will generate this hashtag, criminal Prime Minister, about Narendra Modi in the morning, and they will have their own likes and this, that, and tamasha will go on. At 4 o'clock, he will come to India International Center, and he is speaking in a seminar on how freedom of expression is under great threat in this country. These are the very fellows who are doing it. So, I think the time has come for us to challenge these things. And more important, before I sum up, our constitutional strengths and why we are better than other democracies. Article 14, equality before law and equal protection of laws. Unlike Sweden, Denmark, Norway, where state dictates religion of the head of state, prohibits the marriage without permission of government. Article 14, equality before law, equal protection of the law. We are way miles ahead of these fellows. Article 15, there shall be no discrimination on grounds of race, religion, sex, caste, place of residence. Look at Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Maldives, Argentina, they don't qualify. Article 19, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of trade, profession, residence. All of that we enjoy. Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. Article 25, right to profess, practice and propagate religion. It is hilarious. I have looked at so many dozens of constitutions in the world. Nobody gives a right to propagate religion as a fundamental right. There were 3-4 Christian members in the Constituent Assembly, Father Nicholas, Frank Anthony, and 1 or 2 others, I forget their name. Just 3-4 of them. Just harassed Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Nehru and said propagation is central to Christianity. You must include right to propagate in Article 25. So originally it was just right to profess and practice. Because of this pressure, Nehru said, "Are de do, let them have it." But what this 2.5% Christians in the country don't realize is, it is a right given to all of us. 80% Hindus have the right to propagate. Biggest joke in this country, I must tell you, this is a constitutional provision which came in 1950. But no Hindu has ever read that and said, "Oh, let me propagate Hinduism." He is not even conscious of this fundamental right that is there with him. Nor does he exercise it. But the 2% fellow is all the time charged up and trying to chase this 80%. You see, this little mouse is chasing that elephant and harassing that elephant every day, trying to convert him and trying to, what do they call, harvest his soul. Then Article 25. The Article 26, freedom to manage religious affairs, own property, manage religious institutions and property. Look at all the Muslim, Hindu, among Hindus, the various caste groups which have their own religious mutts and institutions, the Muslim institutions, their educational institutions, Christian institutions. You should see the land when you travel from old airport side, if you come, thousands of acres are with Christian institutions. They are running educational institutions, health institutions, their evangelical, work, etc., etc. And they are all living peacefully last 75 years. And in many places they are doing very good work also in education, health and all those things. Everybody has had this right. Article 28, this is what I said. No religious instruction can be given in any educational institution maintained wholly out of state funds. Religious instruction is compulsory in Argentina, Maldives, etc. Whereas here it is prohibited by our constitution. In state funded educational institutions. So where are we as a democracy compared to these other fellows? Then Article 2930, religious and linguistic minorities, persons having their own language, script, culture have the right to conserve the same. All minorities have the right to run and maintain their educational institutions. Here I want to make one point. This Article 2930, the linguistic and religious minorities, the Constitution talks of linguistic and religious minorities in the same breath. It doesn't separate the two. Actually, the Hindus of India haven't realized the value of this. So, the Kannadigas living in Haryana are a linguistic minority, like Surya Prakash, is protected and shielded by 2930, just like my friend D'Souza and my friend Rafiq, who lives in my colony in Haryana. They are religious minorities, I am a linguistic minority. Both of us have this. So, the different linguistic minorities, in say the Bengalis here in Karnataka, the Bengalis, the Marathis, the Hindi speaking people, they are all linguistic minorities. And if they are Hindus, they have the same protection as the Christians or Jews or Muslims or anybody. Then, having examined the constitutions of nations which are supposedly better democracies than India, I am of the view that those nations which have all the 8 fundamentals listed below can be classified as full-fledged democracies. This is my conclusion in regard to democracy and democratic values. They are as follows: an inviolable commitment to freedom of expression and freedom of conscience, an unambiguous commitment to secularism. By secularism I mean separation of religion and state, separation of religion and state and the things going with it, republican form of government as I explained, right to equality before law, that is Article 14, right to life and personal liberty, Article 21, gender equality, universal adult suffrage. These are the 8 elements I have listed in my website. It's called A.SuryaPrakash.in. And I have argued that any country which has these 8 elements, I will regard as a full-fledged democracy. And I will say that India has these 8. In regard to Sweden, America, all of them, we have to test it. UK, for example, it's a monarchy. So in my view, it is a low-grade democracy. It is not a republic. There is some fellow, some family, which all of the people think that they are great fellows. Whatever be their education, mental ability, this, that, they can be head of state. There are 26 archbishops in the upper house of parliament in Britain. You can imagine the Indian constitution saying that the Swamijis of the following months shall be members of Rajya Sabha. What absurdity is this? And then we have gone and we were taught in our schools that the British were the greatest democrats and they had great parliamentary tradition. What is this parliamentary tradition? In fact, I have visited House of Commons and House of Lords on several occasions. I must just share this with you before I conclude. House of Lords, when I went, it's a red maroon kind of this thing, the whole carpeting and all that. And there is opposition, ruling party opposition. There is no speaker there because at there is a podium, on top of podium is a throne. That is the Queen's chair. When the Queen comes to address Parliament, she will come and sit there and address Parliament. Rest of the time only the chair is there. So that chair is actually the presiding officer. Between them they adjust. Okay, you speak, I speak, you speak, I speak. There is no speaker there. Second, more interesting, there are steps leading up to that throne. On those steps, I found some young people, some in jeans, this, that, slouched in very ungainly postures. Like, if your temple steps or a Kalyani steps, after a bath, this, that, you may just relax and sit this way, that way. I found some young boys and girls sitting there. What is this? So I asked my man who from British Foreign Office who was with me, I said, who are these kids? Yeah, they are the future members of this house. That fellow's father is here, he is speaking. When he dies, this fellow will come and take his place. So what is this? No, that is the practice, you see. For them, they must learn all the how to conduct themselves in the house, this, that. But if you see their conduct on the steps there, like as if they are sitting in Melkote Kalyani. What kind of practices are there? Then the other thing, they said, no, 2 o'clock you must see the speaker's procession. So speaker's office is there. At 1:58 p.m., speaker will come out. So there are batwing doors, and the batwing doors will open like this, and the speaker comes out. When I went many years ago, Betty Boothroyd was the speaker, and she had such a long train. Some 5-6 characters are holding up her frock, and in front there is one fellow with a mace and all that, and at the back this thing. Then the procession came. Then the sergeants were there, and there is a corner at which they have to turn and go into House of Commons. So we were all standing there, outsiders. Many Japanese, some Indians like me, and Americans, this, that, who wanted to see the tamasha. So the sergeant says, strangers, doff your hats. None of us were wearing hats. Only they were wearing hats. So all the sergeants doffed their hats. And Betty Boothroyd passed, and there were some fellows holding up her frock, and they went inside. Then 1 or 2 days we were having lunch and all, I heard ting, 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 bell ringing. They said the chaplain. So at exactly 2 p.m., the chaplain, oh Lord Jesus, please help us do our duty today in Parliament in a good way, and may we do good to people, this, that, a prayer. After that it begins. Now that BBC and all these media, Guardian, this fellow, that fellow, London Times, goes on questioning our secular credentials. After beginning his parliament with this ting, 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 and oh Lord, and prayer and all that. So this is the kind of things we have to challenge, and in my view, this is, from my side I am saying, as a citizen of this country, I will say this is my last offer. If you guys accept it, that is, those who are opposed to the Hinduness of this country. RSF says they have correspondents in every nation. Like in India, they have some 4 or 5 correspondents who in turn talk to some more people. Okay? Maybe 50, 100, 200 in a nation of 1,400. So I raise the question, please tell me, who are your correspondents? Who are they? What is their political affiliation? Because you are saying all these damning things about our democracy. Let us also know, be democratic enough to tell us who are these people who are feeding you this from India. And secondly, they are in turn supposed to interview some 1 dozen, 2 dozen people. And they send their report, on the basis of which this fellow says, I am 142 among democracies in the world. So these are all things. Till now what has happened, until I started looking at all these constitutions, we actually, we never went into this, as to who is this fellow who is rating us. I must also share with you that I have conveyed my views up there, that as the largest democracy in the world, as the most vibrant democracy in the world, we must rate other democracies. Some of these nations are the size of Karol Bagh. In terms of democracy, demography, geography, is the size of Karol Bagh, and this fellow is saying these things about us. We shouldn't put up with this. We have to make them accountable for this. So I have, after examining all this, I sent my conclusions where it had to be sent, and it was conveyed to Ministry of External Affairs, and it is agreed that we have to have our own rating system in the country. We must rate other nations when it comes to democracy, freedom of expression. In fact, I didn't want to go into that because I had already spoken enough today. There are Supreme Court judgments, Allahabad High Court judgment, where FIR was filed against Patricia Mukhimanta. She is a journalist in Meghalaya, Shillong. She had done a story on how some tribals were under attack and all that. So this state government filed a FIR against her and wanted to arrest her. She moved Supreme Court. Then Supreme Court admonished the government. Now, None of these fellows acknowledge. There is a professor in Calcutta who circulated a cartoon on WhatsApp about Mamata Banerjee. She had him arrested and thrown in jail. Okay, many years ago.
3 years.
3 years.
He was in jail.
See that. Now the same is true of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Delhi. Recently, Punjab, you saw what Aam Aadmi Party did with one correspondent of Times Now, and so on and so forth. Not one of these institutions abroad acknowledge that there is so much of diversity in governance in the country, and most important, that law and order is a state subject. They have no idea of the Indian Constitution. Under the 7th schedule, law and order comes in list 2, that is the state list. Modi doesn't run the law and order of Karnataka. Even if Basavaraj Bommai is the chief minister, law and order is the control of the state government. And half of India is run by political parties which are inimical to Bharatiya Janata Party. And they are the ones who are persecuting. They are all, one is worse than the other, who are persecuting people who criticize them. Mamata Banerjee, there are so many. There was some case in Tamil Nadu also the other day. There was a case in Andhra Pradesh. None of these people acknowledge this. They have no idea of our constitutional arrangement, our federal arrangement. So, whenever we see these reports, we have to challenge that on the grounds in which I am suggesting.